I never expected to be betrayed at my own baby shower, but that's exactly what happened. I had spent weeks preparing for this moment, the perfect baby shower. The decorations were beautiful, the cake was gorgeous, and I had invited all the people I loved most. My husband, Dan, had promised he'd be there, supporting me every step of the way. As the guests arrived, I was on cloud 9. Everything was perfect. But then, she showed up. Brittany, a woman I had never seen before, walked in with a confident smile. She was pregnant, clearly in her second trimester, and there was something about her presence that immediately felt off. I watched as she walked directly toward Dan, and I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. Who was she? Why did she look so comfortable in our space? I thought it was just nerves, after all, maybe she was a friend of a friend, but then she spoke, and my world came crashing down. "I'm so glad you could make it," she said to Dan, before turning to me with a smirk and adding, "I'm expecting a baby too. And Dan is the father." My heart stopped. I couldn't breathe. The room seemed to close in around me. Was she serious? Dan just stood there, looking guilty, avoiding my eyes. The tension was unbearable. My hands trembled, but I remained calm. "Excuse me," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I had to know the truth. So, I asked her one question that would change everything. "When is your due date?" The room fell silent as I asked the question. Brittany's smile faltered for just a second, and I could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on me. My heart was racing, but I kept my face composed. She hesitated, looking to Dan for support. He shifted uncomfortably beside me, but I refused to look at him. I needed answers, and I wasn't going to let him avoid this. Finally, Brittany answered, her voice less confident than before. "I'm due in 6 months," she said, a weak smile still plastered on her face. I froze. The timing didn't make sense. I had only just found out I was pregnant 2 months ago, which meant she couldn't possibly be further along than me. Something wasn't adding up. I glanced at Dan, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of guilt in his eyes. He knew. I could feel it. I turned back to Brittany, who was now looking less sure of herself. "Are you sure about that?" I asked, my voice calm but sharp. She nodded, but I could see the uncertainty creeping into her expression. The tension in the air was thick, and I realized I had just exposed the first crack in her story. The silence stretched on as I stared at Brittany, trying to process what she had just said. I could feel the weight of everyone's gaze on me, waiting for my reaction. Brittany's earlier confidence had faded, and I noticed her eyes darting between me and Dan. My mind was racing. If she was lying about the due date, what else was she hiding? I turned to Dan, my heart pounding in my chest. His face had gone pale, and he was shifting uncomfortably on his feet. He couldn't even look me in the eye. "Dan," I said quietly, my voice steady, "you told me everything, didn't you?" He swallowed hard, his lips pressed tight. His silence spoke volumes. I took a deep breath and looked back at Brittany. "You're lying," I said, more firmly now. Brittany's face flushed, and she opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. I could see the panic in her eyes, and I knew I had her cornered. "This isn't about me," I said, addressing everyone in the room now. "This is about the truth." The tension was suffocating. The party I had planned with so much love was falling apart in front of my eyes, and all I could do was hold on to my composure as everything around me crumbled. Dan finally spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "Emily, I'm sorry, I didn't mean for this to happen." His words felt empty, like an attempt to make up for a mistake that could never be undone. I stood there, frozen, trying to hold on to the calm exterior I had maintained throughout the chaos. The room was suffocating, the whispers from the guests growing louder. Some of them looked at me with pity, others with disbelief. Brittany was still standing there, her face a mix of guilt and defiance. She opened her mouth as if to explain, but I wasn't interested in her explanation anymore. I turned away from her, focusing on the one person who should have been by my side, Dan. But even as I looked at him, I realized I didn't know who he was anymore. He had allowed this woman to invade our lives, to destroy what we had built. I don't want your apology, I said quietly, my voice shaking only slightly. I want the truth. Dan's eyes flickered with panic, and I could see the realization hit him. There was no way out of this now. No more lies. No more excuses. The truth had come out, and there was no turning back. The silence in the room was deafening. I could feel the weight of everyone's eyes on me, waiting for me to crumble, waiting for me to break down. But I wasn't going to. Not this time. I had spent so many years pretending that everything was fine, covering up Dan's mistakes, putting on a brave face for the sake of our family. But now, I saw things for what they truly were. Dan was still standing there, his face pale, eyes pleading for my forgiveness, but I could no longer look at him the same way. The man I had loved, the father of my child, had betrayed me in the worst possible way. And Brittany, this woman who had waltzed into my life with such confidence, had exposed him for who he truly was. I took a deep breath, feeling a strange calm wash over me. I'm done, I whispered. The words felt like a weight lifted off my chest. I didn't need to shout, didn't need to cry. The truth was enough. I looked at Dan one last time, my heart heavy with the loss of everything I thought we had. I can't do this anymore. I turned away from him, from all of it. The room, once filled with joy, now felt empty, and I knew there was no going back. As I walked away from Dan, I felt like I was walking out of the life I had known for so many years. My feet were steady, but my heart was heavy. The room behind me was still and silent, as if it too were holding its breath. I could hear Brittany's footsteps behind me, but I didn't turn around. I didn't need to. She had already caused enough damage, and I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of seeing me weak. Outside, the air was cool, and the sky had started to turn a soft shade of orange as the sun began to set. It was a new chapter, one that I hadn't asked for but was forced to face. I pulled out my phone, my hands shaking slightly as I dialed my best friend, Sarah. Emily, she answered after the first ring, her voice filled with concern. Are you okay? I closed my eyes for a moment, taking a deep breath. No, I whispered, my voice breaking for the first time that day. But I will be. I hung up and stood there for a moment, the weight of the decision settling in. I wasn't going to let this break me. I was stronger than this, and I would rebuild. For my baby, for myself, I would move on. The days following the baby shower were a blur. I stayed at home, organizing my thoughts and emotions, while the world around me seemed to continue without skipping a beat. My phone buzzed constantly, texts, calls, messages. Dan's attempts to reach me became increasingly desperate, but I ignored them. It wasn't about him anymore. It was about me, my future, and the life I was going to create for my child. I focused on getting the nursery ready, even though the pain in my chest still lingered. I was hurt, yes, but I refused to let it define me. One evening, as I sat on the couch, a knock on the door interrupted my thoughts. I opened it to find Sarah standing there, her face full of concern. I'm here, she said simply, stepping inside. I could see she had been worried about me, and I appreciated her silent support. How are you holding up? She asked gently. I smiled faintly, trying to keep the weight of everything from showing. I'm doing okay, I said, though I knew I was lying. I'm stronger than I've ever been. Sarah didn't push. She just hugged me, and for that moment everything felt a little bit lighter. As the days passed, I began to realize just how much I had underestimated myself. The betrayal, the humiliation, it all felt like a distant memory now, something that no longer had the power to hurt me. I spent more time focusing on the things that mattered, preparing for my baby's arrival, spending time with friends who truly cared about me, and making sure that my future, my baby's future, would be bright. One morning, as I sat in the nursery, arranging baby clothes and toys, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't known in months. I wasn't alone. I had the strength to move forward, to create a life filled with love and joy for my child. The phone rang, and it was Dan. I knew it would be. I let it ring. I didn't need to answer. I wasn't going to let him back in. I wasn't going to let anyone who disrespected me be a part of my life anymore. I took a deep breath and stood up, looking at the little crib I had set up. This was the new beginning I had been waiting for. The future was uncertain, yes, but one thing was clear: I was going to be okay. Weeks passed, and as my due date grew closer, I found myself surrounded by a new sense of clarity. The pain of betrayal still lingered, but it no longer controlled me. My days were filled with small victories, assembling baby furniture, learning how to care for myself in ways I had forgotten, and connecting with friends who brought warmth back into my life. I spent time reflecting on what I wanted for my child, the kind of world I wanted to create for them. It was a world where they would feel love, respect, and strength, qualities I now understood I had within myself. One morning, as I felt the first true kick of my baby, I smiled. I wasn't just a survivor anymore, I was a fighter, and this child was my reason to keep going. I didn't need Dan's approval, nor did I need Brittany's apology. I had everything I needed right here: my heart, my strength, and the future I was building with every breath. The past was behind me, and all that mattered now was moving forward. As I looked at the baby clothes neatly folded in the nursery, I felt a deep sense of peace. I was ready for this next chapter. I was ready to be the mother I had always dreamed of being.